Hello ladies and gents, Jarek Defiler the Patient Gamer here, breaking away from my sleep-deprived, mouth-drooling, muscle-atrophied 22-hour-long gaming sessions of Baldur's Gate 3 and bringing you something a little different, an actual fan-made expansion to the great and wondrous Slay the Spire. For all of you familiar with my channel, you'll know that Slay the Spire was chosen among my first videos in Let's Play format many moons ago. I adore Slay the Spire and consider it to be one of the games, along with Hades, that got me into the roguelite genre. So I've had my eye on this Downfall expansion for quite some time and finally was able to dip into it recently, giving it a few hours and quite frankly loving it, and as a result I thought I would make a short little video giving a first impression on my time well spent in this very well crafted fan expansion. For those of you who aren't familiar with Slay the Spire, it's a deck building roguelite where you make your way up a tower or spire, battling enemies while building a deck and unlocking new cards and items along the way, as well as characters. It's very casual friendly but also capable of some fairly complex mechanics and builds. Basically, anyone can play and enjoy it. If you're new to the genre, it's a good pick for you. If you're new to deck builders, it's a good pick for you too, break down. If you're a hardcore veteran deck building roguelite champion, you'll get plenty of challenge and satisfaction out of it as well. I'll put my review of Slay the Spire up at the end card of this video if you want to check it out. So what does Downfall bring to the table? For starters, it introduces a new class, the Hermit. A gunslinging, dust jacket poncho wearing shorty that has an interesting gimmick called Dead On, where your cards get special bonuses if they're in proper placement in hand when played, mainly the middle of your cards. So pretty fun. The Hermit also deals pretty strongly in debuffing the enemy with vulnerable, weakness, and a new trait called Bruising, where each stack grants additional attack damage. Pretty gnarly that one. The Hermit also boasts a pretty strong defense game with lots of block cards that synergize well off each other, as well as with the Dead On mechanic. Just like standard Slay the Spire, you can progress and unlock new cards on the Hermit as well. It's a very well crafted character that, I have to be honest, I didn't care for at first. I thought the Dead On mechanic felt a bit too gimmicky for my taste, but as I played a few more rounds with him, or her, whatever it is, I grew to enjoy the Hermit very much. I found the debuff deck with some Dead On cards to be the most fun rather than a straight Dead On build. Very well done by the crew behind Downfall, Table 9 Studio. But wait! There's more! Perhaps the most fun content Downfall brings to Slay the Spire is that of playing the campaign, thusly named Downfall, where you actually play as one of the standard campaign's bosses. In a switch of fate, after being granted a buff from the Corrupt Heart, the player must descend the Spire playing as one of 8 provided villain bosses, fighting the same minions along the way to ultimately end up fighting the new bosses, the regular characters players would normally use. So you find yourself fighting the Hermit, Ironclad, Watcher, etc. The only one I really had any trouble with was the Watcher, as I suck at deck builders and wasn't paying attention when I buffed her to high heaven, resulting in virtually a one-shot. But I defeated her the next time, no biggie. I have yet to unlock all the playable villains, but I did play a decent amount of the Slime Boss, Guardian, Hexaghost, and I unlocked the Champion as well, but I have yet to play him. The Slime Boss has a fun goop mechanic that enhances your attacks. You stack the goop and then proc it with an attack card to consume it for further benefits. You can pull off some crazy damage with this thing. The Slime Boss also has the capabilities of splitting into lesser slimes that grant buffs and damage every turn. It can't be targeted and can ramp up pretty nicely, very similar to the Defect's orbs. Overall, I think I enjoyed the Slime Boss the most out of the playable villain bosses, to be honest. Next up is the Guardian. I think the Guardian was my least favorite out of what I played. The deck has a socket and gem mechanic where you empower cards with gems, making them trigger additional effects. You also have the Guardian's defense mode where he curls up and gains thorns and block. It's not a bad gimmick, but I felt it was a bit boring personally. Lastly, the Guardian can put cards into stasis. This will hold them for a certain amount of time based on their cost, and then when their turn is up, they are returned to your hand as a 0 cost. I could see the potential here in the power plays, but again, it just felt a bit boring to me. I'm sure some may like that style of play, but I couldn't get into it. My brain just doesn't work that way. I guess you could say the Guardian is the Ironclad of the villains, fairly straightforward and not much complexity compared to the other villains. As far as I could see anyways. After that, I tried out the Hexaghost. This boss has a pretty interesting mechanic where it has these flames that need to meet certain parameters in order to charge and activate. Once charged, they trigger a mechanic that ranges from debuffing the enemy to straight out damage or buffing you, the player. You can also build a deck around this mechanic that I didn't dabble in too much. Instead, I found myself doing a soul burn deck, which involves debuffing the enemy with basically a ticking time bomb. You can stack this thing into oblivion, and once Soulburn's turns are up, they set off, dealing damage to the enemy. It was a lot of fun, and I'll probably be playing around with that build a lot more once I unlock all the cards. Like I said, there are 5 other playable villain bosses after that, but this is just a first impressions video, and I have yet to unlock or play all of them. But for a free expansion, or basically a mod, the amount of content here is pretty impressive. Outside of that, the rest of the campaign is pretty much the same with the exception of Act 4. You still open chests, fight elites, rest at campfires, etc., but when you stumble across the merchant, you actually have to fight them. They start with barricade and 400 HP, mostly making the fight unwinnable at the first few encounters. However, their health doesn't regenerate throughout the entire run, so you just whittle them down over time, although they do steal some of your souls, which is the equivalent to gold. But after each engagement with the merchant, you still get to shop. You're just buying things from the corrupt heart rather than the dude on the rug. Pretty neat. Naturally, instead of fighting the corrupt heart in Act 4, you have to break the keys to obtain heart blessing relics and then proceed to fight a special elite battle, and then the main downfall boss, Meow, the big whale we all know and love. I have yet to fight Meow. So there you have it, ladies and gents. Slay the Spire Downfall. I finally got to it. If you're a fan of the original game, chances are you probably already got your hours racked up in Downfall. But if you're not, I highly recommend checking it out. You can play Downfall right from the start. I don't feel you need to have much knowledge with Slay the Spire's regular campaign. Like I said before, it's a very easy game to get into. Easy to learn, difficult to master kind of thing. Like most deck builders, to be fair. Alright, let's end it here. Short and sweet. Go ahead and give Slay the Spire Downfall a try. I think it's definitely worth your time if you're a fan of deck builders and roguelites. And for those of you who have played it, what do you think? Who's your favorite villain to play? Have you beaten Meow? Let me know in the comments. This has been Jarek Defiler. You all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are. And go slay some whale.